everyone that knew my dad respected him and loved him too, because my dad was no bully. What the movie makes it look. He was really not like that.
That was something I wanted to bring up to you, Kevin. I was there opening night watching that. And, I don't want to poo-poo on the director's efforts. It looks like he did a lot of studying and looked into it. But I felt very uneasy about the portrayal of Fritz. I think it's easy with you guys being stars and these kids growing up, and that was their heroes. I'm sure when these incidents was happening with your family, they want somewhere to put the blame. Like, why did this happen? It was the 80s. You guys were huge in that area. I'm sure we've all made our mistakes. I'm sure the brothers did as well. But it seems like it was easy to point the finger at Fritz, and it was done in the movie. I was curious to know how you felt about that.
Well, it would have helped if they at least called me, but I didn't hear a word from those people. You're British, and I mean, they did a good service for people. It was a wrestling movie. It was, about family and all. And so I didn't want to ruin it by, disagreeing with this or these little details. And so I kind of let it go. But I told you how bad my hearing is. I watched the movie, but I couldn't understand the audio, so I was just pretty much saw the visuals. But I'm used to that. That's why I don't watch movies anymore, So I told, Sean Durkin I'd watch it, but I really didn't hear it until I put my earplug things in. And then I had some real problems with it, but it was a little late. I just, gave him my blessing because, why would I, throw a fit about little details when it's a movie, it's entertainment. They took 10 years and tried to squeeze it into 2 hours and, gave him some leeway over that,
Yeah. And, just when it came to Fritz, there was a couple of things I was thinking about, but I think it's easier for the audience and people that are watching that to forget that Fritz lost 5 of his sons. That could not have been easy on Fritz. I can only imagine what that did to his mental health. What was that like for your dad after the tragedies happened?
Well, man, I'm glad you're asking this stuff because this is so true. And let me tell you, one day my book is going to come out and I'm going to write a book and we'll do a real movie of the Von Erichs. And I'll tell you that it was a family. We loved each other. We adored each other. I mean, if one of us had a football game, everybody was there. It was one of us had a amateur wrestling match. We were all there. It was like and we didn't do it because out of a sense of duty. We did it because we really couldn't wait to see how it went. We really just loved each other. And so you have to think now, Dave and I were the 2 oldest brothers and I was the oldest brother and we pretty much kept our little brothers, coming up strong. But Dave and I were on the road so much, and that left Carrie, was pretty much at home with Mike and Chris. And Dave and I were strict. We didn't take any shortcuts, and we insisted our whole family. It was Vince Lombardi posters all over the walls. Winners never quit, quitters never win. Everything was about competition and getting better, a little bit better every day. It's an athletic family. We were always trying to better ourselves, get stronger, not to look in the mirror, but so that we'd be better wrestlers or we could get our way in the ring, and so know that it maybe at first glance you take people like they watch this movie. Fritz was the most honorable, good man I've ever known, and we loved him so much. And so Dave and I weren't at all that way, but Carrie was born right after Jackie was electrocuted in New York, and he was the next baby born. And my dad, to him, I think it was Jackie all over again because that crushed him. When that little 6-year-old boy died, my father was it pulverized him. He was really just done. My mother, it killed both of them. My mother had just lost her little brother months before that to a brain tumor. And she got married, so they'd moved on, but it broke her heart. She loved that boy, baby brother. And then Jackie dies in 1959. It was so hard on both of them. And my father says that he was coming across the Peace Bridge up there in New York, and a car really came close to him, almost hit him or something. And he pulled over and talked to God. He said, God, if you'll just get my family back to Texas, then I'll follow you the rest of my days. And so my dad left New York right after Jackie was killed and went down. He loved to hunt and fish. So he went down to Corpus Christi, the University of Corpus Christi down there, and where he'd been in college. A lot of information here, but he lost his scholarship at SMU because a married player couldn't compete in the AAU back then. So he went to the University of Corpus Christi and finished up his eligibility. He was a really good discus thrower. And so he and my mom were going to live down there in Corpus Christi, but on the way down, he stopped at the Sportatorium and had a wrestling match with Ed McLemore, the old Sportatorium. And thank goodness he did, because it started the ball rolling. We bought a place up in Dallas and eventually took over the promotion too, and bought Ed out. And my dad had Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin, Corpus Christi, and I would say San Antonio and Austin, but we had some competition down there, and Houston. But eventually, we completely saturated all the area and all around us. It's a really popular show. But I was wanting to go back to my dad, and it really, how bad it destroyed him. But I want to tell you before that, we were talking about my brothers, and I want you to know that Dave and I were the way we were, but Carrie was a little more easy on Mike and Chris. And when Dave and I would get home from college and find out certain things, we knew it was wrong. And Carrie was a freewheeling, happy, fun-loving guy, but a terrible example to Mike and Chris. And I believe that's how drugs got into all this, because my brothers, I say my brothers, not Dave, Carrie, Mike, and Chris, if they were so ashamed of themselves being arrested. Carrie, take Carrie, for instance. He'd been arrested. He'd been forming those. Mike died before Carrie. And so Mike was the brother that died right after Dave.
Right.
And Mike was our baby. We loved Mike. He was so good. But when he got that incision in his shoulder, he dislocated his shoulder in a match in Tel Aviv. He was strong. He was going to do great. Mike was a really good junior high athlete. He set all these records as a kid. We thought he'd be, the best of all. But Mike got this toxic shock syndrome in his shoulder. His fever went up to 106, 107 degrees. It was crazy. And we prayed, and God gave us Mike back. He didn't die, but he was brain damaged. And it became more and more evident as time went on. And when Mike didn't die in the hospital, like all the doctors said he would, he told us, he said he was like Hezekiah. And you remember Hezekiah in the Bible? God had found him lacking and was going to kill him. And he prayed and asked God to extend his life. And he gave him, 15 years, wasn't it? Hezekiah. And Mike, I didn't know he knew the Bible that well, but when Mike came out of all this, he said, I'm like Hezekiah. And Mike knew that he was going to die. I think he knew he wasn't healthy. When we'd wrestle, he'd get a black eye. Instead of it being gone in 2 weeks, it'd be there a month. And he wasn't healing like he used to heal. He didn't have his reflexes. And I think Mike felt like we're a family wrestling business. He got arrested for a joint. They found a joint in his pocket. And he was so ashamed. We just signed a deal with Von Erich Bright Enterprises. They owned the Cowboys. And long story, but in Mike's eyes, he really let us down. He really let the whole family down, and he committed suicide for that. And it wasn't my dad. It was Mike's own feeling of guilt and all that, but being on top with drugs. You feel miserable about something like that, but you don't have to kill yourself. But with drugs involved, you can't expect rational behavior. Yeah. And so Mike died. And so Carrie came along. Now, Carrie has this motorcycle wreck where he lost his foot. He was hopeless. He felt like he was a freak, crippled. He spent 3 or 4 hours in the gym a day. Working out. I never spend that long. I'm an hour and a half or an hour. I'm done, But Carrie would stay. It was just that important to him. He had a great body, and that's what he did. But after that bike wreck, he felt like he was a freak. That he just He wouldn't take his boot off around the wrestlers. He wouldn't shower after the matches. In fact, I could tell you some stories. We love to swim in the ocean. And I hate to break this. I want to tell you how it went, but I'll go back and tell you about us being in the ocean. But so Kerry felt like that, and he commits suicide over the feeling of failure, doubt, fear, doubt, guilt, all those things hell sends you. And those arrows that would have bounced off at a time, he was doing drugs, and so they killed him. I mean, Kerry killed himself out of shame and guilt, like Mike did. Mm-hmm. And my brother Chris, it was hopelessness. He wanted to be a pro wrestler like us so much. He was tiny. It just wasn't going to happen. His bones were brittle. I watched him break his arm. And he just knew it wasn't going to happen, but he had begged God to let that happen for him. It just wasn't going to be. And he killed himself out of that hopelessness, but it was tinged with drugs.
And just to reiterate on that, Kevin, that was pressure that Chris put on himself, or was that from Fritz?
It was from Chris, without a doubt. None of us wanted Chris to wrestle. You should have seen the kind of cartoons he could draw. He was a great little artist. And we wanted him to we could have done so much with that, but instead he wanted to be as big as Kerry. And Kerry had always been a natural athlete. We'd all been natural athletes, but we've been drilling ourselves every day of our lives too. And I don't think Mike and Chris realized the price that me, Dave, and Kerry paid. I mean, we had a father that was rough on us, yeah. And if we screwed up, then we knew he was going to kick our butts if he caught us, and he did. And we knew we had it coming, and he kicked our butts. We respected him and loved him for it. I mean, you can call it what you want. I spank my kids, and I'm not going to let any man tell me I'm not going to either, because I know what's right, and that's where I'm going to be. But my father kicked our butts too, and we had discipline. And discipline is important for any man.
What's known as repercussions for your actions. I mean, it's we live in a very weird society nowadays where kids think they can say and or do anything, and to me, that all falls back on parental upbringing. Good, bad, or indifferent, but to be, simply say, go to your room, or we're going to take these. There's such subtle type of things that the United States has raised a very fragile society in a lot of ways. Yeah. And I was raised the same way that you were, Kevin. I mean, my father, you never wanted to let my father get to 3. Okay. The first time he goes, there's like a warning shot, and now there's follow through. So yeah. I thought my father's form of punishment was a swift kick in the hind end, and I thought my father should have been an NFL place kicker, because that was quite the boot.
We got kicked too.
Yeah. I always said that one day I'll have a hump on my shoulder, and people like, oh, Dad, where'd this hump come from? That's not a hump. That's behind it. But my dad put it up here for me.
Yeah. I think maybe that helped us when we were becoming wrestlers, because I remember when Dad would if he wouldn't want to take his belt off, because sometimes we'd be out in the field or something. He didn't want us to get the pond water in our ears, because we had a lot of ducks. He's afraid of those amoebas and all. And so, but boy, if he caught us, he'd come down on that truck and beat our butts with that whip with his belt. And
I've seen that handle going there and the belt. Oh, I've seen that before too. It's like, as you say that. What I'm curious about is, what was it about professional wrestling? Was it because of what your father had been done? I'm just wondering, how all the brothers went into this legacy of professional wrestling, because as I'm listening to you talk earlier, you guys had other skill sets of football and wrestling and which again, that'll even be another question, like going, I hate watching a lot of wrestling products today because there's no wrestling. All it is punch, kick, shoot them off in the ropes, clothesline, stomp on and making. The marquee said professional wrestling. When we going to do a little bit of wrestling? When you going to take someone up, put them down on the ground, do some something down the ground and that? I don't see that exchange.
Well, that's where I grew up in for sure. But But I was going to tell you that how I think it may have. We were talking about how discipline, how my father's way of discipline. I remember when he would come up on us, you know, and he didn't want to take his belt off, so he'd kick us. And so we'd pretend that hurt a whole lot because it was way better than that belt. So it helped us in wrestling. Oh, no more, no.
Yes. The foot was nice, big and broad where, you know, that belt, it bites in there. Oh, yeah.
Kevin, did you or your brothers ever get a whipping that you didn't deserve? How important is that for you, Kevin, to make sure that his legacy is protected and that people know that real story about your dad, Fritz?
Well, man, it's just how it ought to be. It's how it's got to be. If I'm alive and kicking on this earth and I'm letting that go about without it being corrected, then I'll answer for it. And I want to know that I've done my very best, and that my dad looking down on me, or when that time comes, I want him to know that I poured my heart in it. I did my best, you know, because he sure doesn't deserve it. He's the most honorable, good man I've ever known. And he was never the kind of things he would do. He would buy car seats for people that couldn't afford them, or glasses for the children that couldn't afford them. And he would like do it in somebody else's name and stuff. You know, he didn't want the reward. He would just do that stuff. And God would bless him. I'm sure God just blessed him. I don't know if my dad even knew God was blessing him, but as generous as he was, that's why I don't think why he was so successful, because he was so good. And not for a show either. It was just the inside of him. Me and my brothers knew how he really was. And like when somebody had come to my dad and they'd pour their heart out, kind of stuff Dad would say, we just listened to him, you know, and man, that's the way a man is. You know, you keep your word, you do what's right, and the hell with everything else. He
Sounds
never
like the world could use some more Fritz Von Erichs right now.
Yeah.